In this lesson, we will examine some of the pros and cons between using an ORM versus raw SQL statements. First, let's take a look at some benefits of using raw SQL strings in our backend code versus using an ORM. An ORM is written for a specific backend programming language. But when we use raw SQL, it is compatible with any backend, whether it's written in Java, C++, Python, or any other language. This makes it more portable, as well as easier to maintain since we don't need to install, manage, or learn to use an ORM. This helps new contributors to get up to speed much faster. Another interesting point to consider is that historically, many flawed database designs can be attributed to biases that may be introduced by tools such as ORMs. Databases should be designed based on the first principles we covered in Week 1, not simply to make them convenient to use with other tools. On the other hand, there are some reasons why an ORM might be a good choice. First off, using an ORM is convenient for someone with more experience in a backend language, but no experience in SQL. Note that an ORM doesn't remove the need to learn SQL altogether. After all, the ORM is still running regular SQL queries under the hood. Using an ORM will increase the initial speed of development in many cases. This makes it especially great for prototyping and trying out new ideas. One of the most compelling benefits of an ORM is the ability to organize query data in a consistent, object-oriented fashion with consistent naming patterns. It also usually ends up requiring fewer lines of code. Finally, many ORMs come with an integrated migrations feature that allow you to write database migrations using a backend language, such as Python. In summary, here are the major trade-offs between the two approaches. Raw SQL accesses the database with low-level direct queries, without having to go through the layers of a higher-level abstraction provided by an ORM. An ORM might be more convenient for simpler tasks, but the abstractions can break down as complexity grows, and you may find yourself spending more time learning how the ORM tooling works than getting things done. Thus, Raw SQL is better suited for complex queries. Raw SQL uses a functional approach, whereas ORMs use an object-oriented approach. If you are interested in learning why ORMs can break down in certain scenarios, we will link some readings on the concept of object-relational impedance mismatch. This describes a collection of various issues an ORM can bring, largely stemming from the fact that relational SQL is based on relational algebra, whereas object-oriented programming is based on graph theory, and mapping between these two domains is not a trivial matter. This content is out of scope for this course, but you are welcome to explore it on your own. So how do we know when to choose one or the other? As for most questions in software, the answer is it depends. Each software project works within constraints, such as the resources devoted to a project in terms of time and money, the scale of the project, and the expertise of the developers working on it. Thus, the better solution for each project should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. As a final note, it's important to understand that an ORM simply layers Python or another language on top of the SQL queries being executed. Only some backends use an ORM, and even when they do, it's still important to know the underlying SQL. There's no way around having to learn SQL if you want to use a relational database, so take the time to do so.